I too watched the BBC Hard Talk interview, and I thought it was compelling, both in terms of the breadth of the issues covered, but also the very nuanced yet precise definitions of so many of the problems we face today. In some sense, I'm both a poor match for opining, because I'm actively in politics and even more so sitting in government. And in some other sense, a biased kind of commentator, because I head the IT wing of the DMK, and much of our work is in the propaganda and distribution business ourselves. So it'll be a bit like an insider talking. But I will just throw out a few thoughts that are in my mind, and I hope I will be enlightened, and I'm sure I will be enlightened by the comments of the distinguished panelists. So, of course, Mr. Gandhi touched on many of them, which is how independent is the media, how much does the government influence either through the carrot or the stick, the carrot of advertising revenues or the stick of action, not just enforcement action on censorship, but also action using arms of government like the ED and the CBI and the income tax and so forth. There's also the question of, we are not in a stable media environment. We are in a moment of flux. So, for example, there is one paper run by a very openly sympathetic right-wing kind of Hindutva family in Tamil Nadu. They claim they're the #1 circulation local language paper. But we find that their reach is declining very, very clearly. There used to be a time when what they said was taken as gospel, and as time goes on, the power of the internet has fundamentally decayed their reach, and that has decayed their revenue model, and has forced the owners of that publication into many other businesses as a means of kind of keeping profitable. So in this transition away from a traditional press model to a more internet-driven model, the pressures on media houses to both stay profitable and, in some sense, stay afloat is also, I think, a big impact or a big influence on their outcomes. Of course, the good news is that always these kinds of transitions bring about opportunity, and institutions like The Wire, which, as they may struggle to be, hugely profitable, but they have an oversized impact on the nature of the debate and the quality of the data because of their reputation for integrity and their continuous kind of high standards of reporting. So at a time like this, I think, as an active person, the things that worry me, and I think this is really the right approach for me to take, the things that worry me is what happens in places where education and internet penetration is low. In places where education and internet penetration is high, as skewed as the papers may be, there are so many sources of information. Even the so-called WhatsApp University has enough players of all types that in a broadly connected society, it's very hard to get away with fake news for any length of time. But where you don't have this kind of situation, where you don't have the penetration of the internet or social media or WhatsApp, and you don't have high education levels, then the only source of information becomes the TV and the newspaper. And if you can game that, being a powerful authoritarian or somehow a controller of the media, then you can really build an alternate reality for a lot of people for a reasonable length of time. Nothing lasts forever, but you can create an alternate reality for a reasonable length of time. And then the interplay between what is seen in the public eye as somehow higher standards of journalism, which is the print and the TV, are somehow seen as higher standards of journalism. Everybody understands that WhatsApp and social media is open to all, and anything can be manipulated in anything. But if you try and level one off the other, where you pick up stuff from social media and then broadcast it on TV or newspapers as if it is the truth, or vice versa, you plant a false story in the news, in the paper or print or the magazine or the TV, and then you lever that using social media, trying to pretend that this is somehow legitimate because it has appeared in the print or in the TV. And then, of course, you can make fake cards and all that. So this combination of a business model in flux, of an industry in transition, plus a democracy somewhat in flux and certainly under greater risk than it has been any time since independence, plus a communication kind of differential between some parts of the country and the other parts of the country, throw up some really interesting and dynamic situations. And I think it is at a cognitive level fascinating. At a practical level, as an active politician, it is both fear-inducing in some ways, but also very exciting in terms of the opportunities. And I'll just end with one last thing, which is that having come to government in less than 3 months ago, one of the things that is very, very clear is that the channels of communication or dissemination of information that the government uses is so far behind what political parties use, at least in a state like Tamil Nadu. I'm not sure that's true in Delhi, but to some extent, I think that's still true. And so very often you can't distinguish where is the line between the official government release and that of the party running the government, though it is a private news release. And this it's because they're so far apart. And if we are competing in the same space, then it would be clear that there was a difference. But mostly the government seems to be in newsprint and to a lesser extent in TV and a much lesser extent in radio, but almost non-existent in social media and on WhatsApp. And the party mechanisms are all geared towards that aspect. So the line between the official government and the ruling or governing party also get blurred a lot. And why that's important is ruling governments have to be held to account. There's a democratic standard. You cannot just say anything and get away with it. But parties can still be as badly behaved in power or out of power or in governments or out of governments. So I think these are the things that worry me, and especially in the divide between the haves and the have-nots, both in terms of education and in terms of penetration of multiple sources of media. I worry about the future of the country, particularly because the mass of MP seats and the effective determinant of who gets to run the government of India comes largely from the belt that has the poorest education and the lowest penetration of internet, also the poorest economy, but that's either the root cause or the secondary effect of these two. So what does that do for our democracy as a whole nation is something that worries me a lot. But I'm sure the other panelists have thought about this and done a lot more research and analysis of it and lived it at a more personal level than I have. So I'm fascinated to hear what they have to say. So let me just close my remarks here by again thanking each of them for participating. As I've said when we started the Dravidian Professionals Forum, that ideas are the lifeblood of any movement. Certainly the Dravidian movement, which is a century old, needs to be continuously rejuvenated with new ideas and debates. And in that sense, I commend the work that is being done by the Dravidian Professionals Forum and the coordinators. And I'm very thrilled to see such an event, and I hope to learn a lot from it. Thank you.